Good afternoon, good evening, wherever you are coming from. We thank you for joining us. We have a wonderful presentation going on today. We're going to have some great speakers coming in, and they're going to be talking from the MBA program here at Bay Path University. And I'm going to actually hand it over to them so they can introduce herself just because I'm struggling. So without further ado, program manager is going to start us out. Dr. Rosner, can you stop?
Yes, Rashida, we love you, and we hope you feel better. But we thank you so much for taking the lead this evening and being with us and joining the team here. So thank you so much for your leadership and the opportunity to be part of your hot topics and to share our panels today. I am Dr. Laurie Rosner. I am the program director for the MBA program. I'm also the assistant dean of the School of Management Technology and graduate business program and doctoral program at Bay Path University and Cambridge College. So I'm really thrilled about that. And I am also very excited to have with you this evening Professor Bethany Backer, who is an instructor in our MBA program and also a graduate from this program, but I'll have her share those details with you. So thank you for joining us this evening. And Professor Bethany, would you like to take it away?
I certainly would. Thank you for having me here tonight. As Dr. Rosner shared, I am a graduate of the MBA program. I graduated just this past May. I have found so much value in the information I learned from this program and the use, and there is so many useful tools that you can take away from the MBA program and actually go back into the world and have these skills that just elevate you to these whole different levels of managerialship and professionalism that I can't speak enough about how much has been impactful for me. Tonight, we're going to talk about one of those specific tools, communities of practice. So we're going to be building connections, harnessing the power of communities of practice. So just a brief overview for tonight. Webinars are a little bit different than your traditional Zoom or Teams meeting. So those of you who have what I have on my right-hand side of the screen is a little control bar with an orange arrow. That arrow looks like it would be the exit button on a Teams or a Zoom meeting, but it is actually expands your panel and allows you to access the chat feature. So if at any point during tonight you have a question, a comment, you want to review something in more detail, please feel free, expand that, hop in the chat. Rashida will be there to help us out. Let us know if there's anything going on, and we'd love to dive into those with you. Tonight, we're also going to learn what is a community of practice, why community of practices matter in business. We are going to review some real-world applications, and we're going to discuss some practical tips to build your own community of practice. To kick us off, I would like us to think about what is community to you. Feel free to hop in the chat. Go ahead, put a couple words, some brief descriptions. And Dr. Roser, if you could share, what do you think of when you hear the word community?
I think of a community that I belong to that can help me continue to grow, help me to learn, help me push myself out of my comfort zone, manage my knowledge to be continuously improving. Because jobs becoming very complex, especially nowadays. I don't know about you, what you think, but things are evolving and even how we do business is evolving. So how can it help me do and perform my job better because I have this community that practices those type of behaviors as well, and I can join them so I can not only perform the task, but I can learn and continuously improve.
I love that. I also, when I think of community, I think of a place where I'm safe, where I belong, where I want to keep going back to, somewhere where I'm valued.
It definitely is feeling like you belong and being a part of something. So it makes you feel like you're together. You're stronger together as a community, and you can lean on people for support, but also grow and network to expand that community.
Well, I love that because it allows us to be vulnerable, because we only know what we know. Our knowledge is only limited by our own lack of knowledge. And so putting our guard down and forming these communities allows us to be vulnerable and to learn and to manage your own knowledge of what you don't know.
Absolutely. There's many dictionary descriptions of community, um, but for the purposes of community of practice, the Merriam-Webster describes it as feeling of fellowship with others as a result of sharing common attitudes, interests, and goals. So some key components are there as fellowship with others, communication back and forth. We're sharing interest and we're developing goals. So these are going to be some of our key themes throughout the community of practice tonight. So we're going to dive into what a community of practice is. Um, it's defined by Etienne Wagner as a group of people who share a concern or passion for something they do and learn how to do it better as they interact regularly. So let's break that down into some components of what that really means in a day-to-day concept. So COPs are people doing the same process, and they collectively want to take actionable steps to improve their performance. Some of the keywords there are improve. You want to use this opportunity to share and get better at your job, your school, wherever you are building these communities of practice, your goal is to keep continually improving. If we think about some of the organizations that got to the point where they thought they were too big to fail, right? Where they didn't think they could get any better, they'd reached perfection. We have Kodak, we have Blockbuster, um, as just a few examples. They thought they reached peak performance and they stopped improving. So a important thing to remember is that no matter where you are, you can always get better somewhere. And that's a community of practice really kind of embodies that principle. They also focus on social learning through communication. So there may be a leader that's assigned just kind of to keep things going, follow the next steps, but they don't have any authority or power. All members are equal. There's been a few community practices that I've been aware of that actually rotate who the leader is from week to week so that nobody kind of develops an authoritarian style. It's everybody gets a chance to be open and honest in the communication. And they are a modality of continuous improvement.
Really like that. I think that that really, because you make me think about the word practice, right? Because if you break down the term here, community of practice, you're actually practicing it, which means
Mm-hmm.
practice. Maybe you can share with me what you think the word practice means, because to me, practice is like trying something new and practicing and being able to have that new knowledge and try it out and see how it works and then have these iterative improvements with my community and then share my findings and have other people share. Have you ever had someone say, hey, what did you learn today? What did you learn this last month? You know, those community of practice questions. But Rashida, Bethany, what do you think of when you hear the word practice?
Yeah, also absolutely. I think in regards to you're asking like what did you learn today? The other one you get is I can't wait to show you what I learned. Like I found this new thing, wait till you figure it out. It's gonna make life so much better. Um
I love
We
that. I think we just did that this past week, didn't we?
we did. I think we did that
I
yesterday.
did.
Um, the the I'm diving into the next slide with this one because practice is part of this. So we the members of a community of practice, they're practitioners. That's a key component of this, right? So they are actively in the area or the arena that you are trying to improve. So for I am an animal lover for anybody who doesn't know me. Um, so I would say you're not going to go as a dog food company and look for people who only own parrots to be part of your community of practice. They're not going to have any value input. They're not using the product. They're not having any shopping experience for the product. So it has to be somebody who's in the space that you're trying to improve. And I think that's a key component of practice.
So, for example, uh, we have a community practice at Bay Path where program directors get together and we collectively have very similar roles, but we're finding a lot of newness happening between departments and how we're integrating and changing and enhancing and adding programs. So we're constantly working with others and we're trying to learn how to have these processes more fluid because a lot of it's manual. So we're trying to see how we can learn from one another and what someone's ahead of us a little bit or someone's behind. So because we all have that same common interest, it's helping us actually be better program um, directors.
Yes, that's a great example for us to really dive into this components of a community of practice. So your group of program directors, they have a purpose of making it more efficient to be a program director and being up with the latest and greatest on finding new material and making sure that you're relevant in the field and hiring the best staff for these teaching positions and making sure that the students have a cohesive experience no matter if they're in business or science or special education. We want to have BayPass students all have the best of the best experience. The second component of a community of practice is you want people who want to be there and who are willing to develop and address concerns. So you're not going to have good success if you try to force a group of people to be a community of practice. It has to be trusting, honest, open. Have you found the same, Dr. Rosner, that when you have willing participants, you get better quality community of practice?
Well, this community formed organically. It wasn't, the organization did not form this. So this community of practice was formed by a collectivism of us identifying and talking, and then we kind of like formed, and we have an informal leader. And now we have guest speakers coming in where we see lack of knowledge management in certain areas that for our understanding. And so we're able to uh, actually even learn more. And it's a Zoom meeting, so it's optional. If you can't make it, that's fine. There's nothing formal. There's no minutes. This is just an organic place where you're part of, and you may get documents or something after the meeting collectively, or they say, do you think this would help you? And so it's something where it's not required, and everybody that comes wants to be there.
Exactly. I think that's a super important component is you can't require it. You have to, it's got to be open to people who want to participate because if you don't have that want to participate, you're not going to get good quality peer-to-peer relationships.
And that's important.
Yeah, and it's like the word post-mortem, right? We look at things even after. Is that iterative improvement, and that you want to come to these community of practices because you're like, what did you find? Because I'm a little behind you, or or what did you do? This is what I did.
Absolutely. Um, so I think we have a greater understanding what a community of practice is, but like every change in an organization, the question comes down to why. Why would we do this? Why would we use it? What can it get the organization? Um, and so one thing that we see with community of practices that they set and communicate a shared vision and purpose among different departments and or same position within an organization. For example, the program managers at Baypath can set a shared vision and purpose. They produce measurable results that address timely concerns. I'm sure most of us have had organizational surveys that come out once a year and they ask for concerns, and then a team reviews those concerns. They make some changes and see what happens. Nothing is going to be more timely than a regular communication where it just organically comes up. Hey, did you guys notice that our enrollment system no longer operates the way it used to? What happened? What changed? How can we fix it? Those kind of communications just occur organically within a community of practice, and that's going to get to more timely results.
I definitely love that part, just to speak on that, because I started in the undergrad program and I've been working with Dr. Rosner since the beginning. And so when we started, it made it easier when she took over this position. And it just was, like you said, organic. And it was, hey, can we meet? I can't wait to work with you. Let me know if you need anything. And that's how it started. And it made it so easy for us to communicate. And I love it because that shows true commitment to the program, but it also shows commitment between the two of us when it comes time to actually meet and talk about what's important to both of us. So I thank her for that. And I thank you for coming on tonight as well.
Well, thank you, Rashida, because it's, I love what you said because we learn from each other. And uh, I think, there's a theory out there called self-regulated learning, and it's the highest form of owning your own learning. And the biggest question is, what do I not know? So
Right.
you and I talked about that, and we can lean on each other. And we also have other members who may come to our meetings or not be able to come to our meetings. Versus, we do have tasks, right? But that's not a community practice. That is, we do and perform our tasks. But where we have these relationships and these opportunities to even express novel, unique things or new ideas. Just because we've done it this way doesn't mean that it's going to work again for us in the future. Yes, we have a baseline. Yes, we have understandings, but it's a community is something you have to be conscious of. And that's why I'm just so happy everybody's here this evening, because sometimes even organizations don't even identify they have community or practices even happening within the organization and how it can be leveraged.
Exactly.
Yes, that's a huge thing. Community of practices often happen organically in the break room or before and after work events. And this knowing the term and putting the framework around it really sets that expectation to kind of um, get it to have measurable, trackable achievements. Um, in terms of a business, it's a super low cost initiative. um, you can set it up over coffee in the break room Monday mornings. Hey, let's just chit chat about our departments and see if we have anything to share. There's no infrastructure needed to set one up. There's no um, like implications of time cost. It's just really an hour a week or an hour a month even can come and produce some incredible results for an organization. It also allows for people with different backgrounds, different cultures, different education, just to come together and see a problem from their own viewpoint. And from this, you get some really intersectional thinking and some creative solutions that, just the same people, same background in the same room would never be able to come up with.
Yeah, I love that because that's the Medici effect, right? The intersection
Absolutely.
hunting of actually know that you're hunting. You're looking for diversity of thoughts, different viewpoints, because we need everybody's different knowledge management, their different background, their different cultures, their different points of view, because that's what creates the excitement. That's where the magic happens, is when we bring everybody together and just have them share their thoughts and their experiences. Or you may want do something in one industry and you can actually adopt it and modify it in another industry, because these community practices don't need to be just inside your organization. They can also be external, internal and external members that you have developed. And like you said, our community practice that we meet for an hour every other week, and it's optional.
Yeah. It's a great value with like very, very little um, cost to the organization. There's practically no downside if you're thinking about starting one. There's many organizations that use this framework successfully. Some of the ones that shared their experience on uh, were Hewlett Packard. They have their software sales team have a community of practice with their goal is to become more efficient and reducing leads per sale. Anybody who's ever worked in sales knows that you need 100 leads to get like 7 sales. And if you can get the same 100 leads and turn it to 30 sales, you're going to make more money. You're going to be more efficient. You're going to be less burnt out from the process. So they've got their sales team together, sharing best practices, sharing what doesn't work, discussing ways to get better in terms of their sales team. We also see Hill's pet food nutrition process. They use a COP for quality control. This one is really unique because they don't just have people internal to the organization. They have outsiders. They have customers. They have veterinarians. They have their scientists, and they're looking at making a product that the dogs like to eat, the consumers like to buy, that it is healthy for them, that it's cost effective for manufacturers. So they have a very comprehensive community of practice with the end goal of a product that dogs love and how to improve it. And in the Bay Path EDD program, which I'm currently part of, we have a community of practice that we meet to discuss our coursework. And mostly we want to share our experience using what we learned and how we take it back to being educators. And we share what our university does with somebody else's university. And we talk about what we can improve, what we can bring back, how we can become better educators.
Yeah, I really love that, because it's what you're doing is, um, I'm asking everybody here, think about your community of practices that you may be involved in right now that you may not even realize that are community of practices. And where do you want your career to go? Where do you want to be sought after? How do you problem solve? What excites you to stay on the cutting edge? You're here right now this evening, so we already know you want to stay current, and you want to achieve the results that you're looking for. And your curiosity is what ignites this community of practice. It's thinking about a seed and planting it and nurturing it. And how can you create and be conscious of your community of practice? I wanted to do raised garden beds. So I created my own little community of practice of learning from one another and what others have done, and nurturing and making sure that certain plants are together and feed off each other for bug and pest control. But, it's all these things. But sometimes we just have to be aware that sometimes we're already doing this, but we don't know that there's an actually theory to label it.
Absolutely. Once I learned about community of practices and what they were, I started seeing them everywhere. Um, for me, one of the biggest, earliest takeaways was waiting outside my daughter's preschool for the pickup line, and all of us parents were complaining about how the same thing every day. It's all congested. We have to wait for the buses to come by, and we're blocking traffic in the road. And we got together and we figured out, okay, these kids, parents are going to get here at 3 o'clock, 3:05, 3:07, 3:10, and we timed ourselves out to kind of alleviate some of that congestion without waiting for the school to do it. And it wasn't until afterwards where I thought back, hey, we were our own community of practice there. We saw the problem, we discussed it, we improved it, and we saw if it worked, and then we adjusted times accordingly as we needed to.
It definitely shows a sense of commitment to the group. And I think that's the biggest thing is by showing that you are active in the group, it shows that you buy into the betterment of the whole group as itself as it grows.
You made me think of this is really about problem solving and also mitigating risk, right? And thinking the what if statement or unintended consequences, uh, pre-planning, pilot testing, doing these things proactively, because I don't know about you, we all have a lot going on every single day. And sometimes we don't have the luxury of doing all the things that we wish we could and wish we could be part of. We need to actually put community practice on our calendar and practice it with our community, because we're practicing learning and improving within our community. Love it.
Absolutely. That's going to help me slide into this next one here. We're going to talk about the practical steps to creating a community of practice. Um, we all know now that they're important and beneficial, but how do we go about getting this into our organization, getting this into our community groups? This can be used at any level of an organization. So, what do we need to actually turn a coffee chat into a community of practice and to make it beneficial to the organization? So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to look for where they're naturally occurring. You're going to keep an eye out for where people are leaning on each other for support and resources and sharing. And that may look like your accounting manager coming to your sales manager to figure out how to better track metrics. That may look like the entire workforce in the break room figuring out why the coffee pot's always broke. But where are these naturally conversations about how we can make something better occurring? And once you've identified a few, you're going to start to look for how you can turn that naturally building trust, communication, connection into a shared purpose. And you want to focus on continual learning in those communications. You really want to, oh, go ahead.
No, I really love that, because really this is as as you're thinking about what Bethany is sharing, community practice is a social theory of learning and what you're practicing. So think about what you're practicing, thinking about the meaning of that practice and what's the identity of it, what makes it common, what's your common thread, and who is your community. So sorry, Bethany, I was just thinking that.
Oh, yeah, no, absolutely. Yes, who is your community? And when you are in the community, you want to build trust. So it needs to be a place where something that seems like a super oddball idea can be expressed openly and nobody's going to laugh at them. So um, we all have, those one off thoughts that are like, oh, this building would be so much better if we had curtains over here. But it doesn't seem important. It doesn't seem relevant. But you might mention it and realize that everybody else has been thinking that same thing, and that the person who sits at the desk near that area is getting headaches every day, so they're not producing after a certain time with the sunshine in their eyes. So when you're in those kind of environments, just because it doesn't seem important doesn't mean you shouldn't say it. And the more the community discusses those things and works to, identify if it's worth solving or solve it and see success, the stronger that connection, the stronger that trust is going to build, and the more they're going to be willing to tackle the next harder problem. Um, you want to keep these questions in the center of the mind when you're in these groups is, what do I not know? We all can learn. We all have areas that we have not been exposed to or not exposed to enough. And actively seeking those out and gathering that information is going to make you a better trusted member of these communities. You also want to find out, how can I learn from others? Sometimes that's adapting to their communication style and knowing that you need to pull back from talking, or you need to come out of your shell and talk a little bit more in order to be active in these communities. And then how can they learn from me? So how can I phrase my experience or my questions into a way that adds value to these communities?
Yeah, because it's a learning community. This is a learning community. Great.
Mm-hmm. Um, and in my opinion, this is the most important step: is put it on the calendar, set a time, figure out if it's Zoom or in person. But if it's not on the calendar, it's just an idea that never happens. So when you identify and you figure out members, get it on a calendar.
Rashida's like, yes. We're important, if we don't spend time for ourselves and create these opportunities or identify that we're already participating in, it's just it's something that of why you're here tonight, right? To identify these things. And I think that's when it gets really exciting.
Absolutely. And I think like I'm sure we've all had experiences where it's like, oh, I'd love to have dinner with you, and then 3 years go by and you're like, do I still have their phone number? Um, if you don't, if you take the idea and you let it just disappear, then you're losing that value, and your community's losing that value, and your organization's losing that value. So just taking the 5 minutes to create the invite and send it out there to, whoever you think would be willing to come, it's gonna put you a step further and you're not gonna regret it. Um, we've already talked about cultivating trust and openness, but I just want to reiterate that they need to be a safe space. They need to be a space where everybody's welcome. Um, I know we talked about the importance of being a practitioner, but even within that, if somebody's just there to learn and they are not actively practicing the problem you're trying to solve, they should still be welcome. They still have valuable input. They still have that intersectionality approach of their outside experience that can come into this problem. That might be exactly what you're needing. So just because your community of practice is focused on program managers at Bay Path University does not mean a student's viewpoint is not going to be what you need to solve your problem, or does not mean that an alumna's experience isn't going to be what you need. So just remember that everybody should be welcome and invited to give their input if they're willing to participate.
And
And
Bethany,
I
I love
think
that.
yeah, I think
Please.
it's a key thing to provide trust within a group, because just like the person you say won't talk in a group, they may send an email. Okay, well, listen, this is an idea that I was thinking of, but I didn't get a chance to say. So now you're giving them that leeway to even open it up, and maybe they're a writer, so it's easier for them to just express themselves through writing and getting their stuff out as well. So all communication levels are wanted in these groups. So whether it's writing, communicating, whatever it is, make sure it's getting out there for a group to develop that trust and openness.
I think that is such an important point. I'm going to flip what I was just about to say back to this. Not everybody has, I mean, have you been like in a meeting and they come up with this idea and they're like, okay, let's brainstorm, let's go. And you're like, no, I'm the type of person that I need to think about this. Give me some pause, and you become very quiet and you think it through, and then you can send or to develop those thoughts maybe by the next meeting. Or everybody doesn't have the same communication style. And that's the great thing about the community of practice is let it breathe. Let it breathe. Don't structure it. We actually go into our community of practice meeting, no agenda. We just come in and we share what's going on and happening and nuances. And it's such a freedom type of thing. And I have to tell you, in that hour, we get more things done in that hour, and that is great for the organization. It's great for the students. It's great for our morale, and the excitement, because it's a common purpose. It's a common mission. And to go back to my original thought was, we bring guests in. We say, hey, we have this, we don't call it a community practice, but we say we have this group that is on this initiative. We'd love to learn more from you. Here's some of the things we're experiencing. And they come in, and just today we had someone come in and they were like, can I come every week? Every other week, can I be part of this? We're like, sure, you can join, because it's not formalized. And they're like, well, my boss is telling me I have to be here, and I'm gaining benefits and insight, and I can do my job better, and I'm learning things that I now understand in another department that I didn't understand why they asked me for that. It's really neat.
Absolutely. I love that. And Rashida, to your point in the the written communication, I think that to echo Dr. Rosner's, like a community practice meeting shouldn't have a set agenda per se. If you want to have a few touch points that like, hey, everybody comes with like one or two pain points that they want to discuss, that's fine, but it shouldn't have like a set agenda. But there's going to be so many things thrown out in these communications that it is nice to have somebody to record that, or a way of recording that, so you don't lose any of those ideas. And it can be like a recap email that gets sent after to the members who are there. Hey, just following through with our great meeting today. We had a wonderful time. We discussed these wonderful ideas. Anybody take away anything that I didn't, feel free to add it. And that gives them that written piece. So if they didn't speak up then they have a platform afterwards to follow through. So your great point with that, Rashida, call out is that you want a diverse group, and so you want to open diverse communication styles as well. Absolutely.
Yeah, um, I think that's so powerful. And when you have the community of practice of learning like that, because it's really about practicing knowledge management, learning, problem solving. And I don't know about you, but have you been in meetings where people just come in and they complain, and it turns into this meeting that is just, I don't know, when I leave, I'm like, I don't feel as excited. I'm like, oh, I'm not sure I want to come back to these meetings. uh, versus having a community practice that we know that we're like solution superheroes. And one of the things that we do to keep that on task, because sometimes it is a little easy to say, woe is me. We ask our members to say yes and. So I know you probably have. So we're in meetings and someone says something, and we're like, yes, and, because it may be a idea out here, but it is relevant. So we build on each other versus categorizing the temperature of the idea. We build on and go, yes, and that just has a great positive synergy for our team or
Absolutely.
community of practice, because a team doesn't necessarily mean it's a community of practice, right? Because a team can be formed, but a community of practice is really for that purpose of betterment.
Absolutely. I couldn't echo that more, particularly the yes and. Every idea is relevant. Every idea is important. They all have value. And the more you communicate and the more you effective and efficient you become in the process, the more you can explore for concepts. So like take them all, look at them all, revisit them all. That's another value in doing a meeting recap is that you can revisit in 6 months, say, hey, this looked too big when we first formed this community of practice, but so we've solved A, B, C, and D. Let's go back and tackle this one that we thought was too big at the time. Um, and that's where you get to like measure and celebrating progress when you kind of revisit those and you say, wow, when we first started, no department had an easy system for managing email. And now we all know, what's important and we get it done first. And we have systems to remind us in 3 days when we miss something. And now we can dive into a more challenging problem or a new situation that just occurred because technology changed and we have to adapt. So I know we had a lot of information here, and we are running towards the end of our time. So I'm wondering if anybody out there, for Sheeta, we have any questions on this material or how to use it or what we're looking at.
I definitely think one question that should be up is what is a quick recap of how a person can start their own community of practice within their own job? How would you say for them to start and feel confident in starting it themselves?
Yeah, absolutely. The first thing again, look for naturally occurring communications where people are discussing a problem, and you can you can start with a small teams meet and say, hey, looking to discuss the break room coffee pot issues. Would you like to meet Friday 2 p.m. for half an hour? And then see if anybody comes. And then when they get there, you say, hey, this is actually part of the community of practice framework. I would really like to see if we can grow it. Would any of you be interested? Just kind of openly, honestly start that communication. But the biggest point is to look for where they're occurring and put it on the calendar. Those are the really two steps. And then once you get people curious and interested, you can grow it, you can focus it, you can kind of highlight the need for it.
All right, we have one person, Natalia. She actually raised her hand. Let's see if we can connect her to talking. Uh,
Right.
you are free to talk if you want. I have unlinked it. She put her hands up, so I'm not sure. I would love to hear the question. Ah, there we go. We got a mic. Hello.
Hello.
She's unmuted. We're trying something new. We do have it open to hear you. And meanwhile, while she's trying to get on and let us talk, if anybody else has any questions about this topic, I would love to hear it.
The webinar format is a little bit more complicated than a straight Zoom. It's not as simple as I'm muting your mic. You have to like allow and give permission. So There's
And I,
also the chat if anybody wants to type questions in there too.
mhm. And she's actually unmuted. So we do have that up there. I unmuted her and she's able to contact. So she's green, but it's not showing up. So I'm not sure where she's at with it. So uh, while she's working on that, I guess let's see if we can get some more questions going. Sorry about that, guys.
No worries.
No
Rashida,
worries. It's
I'm curious while you're seeing if you can get that. Do you see any areas in your life where now that you know this framework and you kind of dive deeper into it? Sorry to ask you. I know your voice is how mine felt a couple weeks ago, so I've been there. Um, but do you see any places where like, oh, that's a community of practice and I didn't even know it?
Yes, definitely. So I do with my program directors that I work with. I personally make sure I'm in contact with them throughout the month. So if that means that I need to do a video chat with them or meet with them, we meet personally. And we also bring in other departments with us just to have that bond and make sure they know they can reach out to me with anything. Also, I would definitely say, even within family, you can do that, and you can build that bond with your family as far as being able to set a group within the family unit. So it may be okay, well, you can come to me and talk to me if something's bothering you. Well, how about we invite this person because they kind of went through it as well. So I definitely see that in my family, and I definitely see it in my professional career as far as working for Bay Path. More so, that was one of the reasons I loved moving into this position as far as working for Bay Path. I loved the way everyone was bonded here and together. When I came to visit, actually, when I was teaching, and I ended up loving it. And I was like, oh my God, I got to work there. Let me apply. So
That's
definitely. How
awesome.
about yourself?
I've started to look at reframing things that I do anyway as a community practice. Um, like joining Facebook groups for like I train parrots. So it's not a huge community of parrot trainers in the New England region, but online I have unlimited access. So I started reframing, okay, so how can I get better and how can I use this shared knowledge? And even though there's no like formal structure to those kind of things, it still is a community of practice. So you can get creative in using this framework for development. You could use it, you could create a group for other universities to come online and make an online community of practice where we all share what we've learned, how we're going, what are we doing with ChatGPT, how are we handling the world changes, how are we handling things that may affect the Department of Education and funding. What are we doing with these things? You can all come together. It doesn't have to be in your organization. It doesn't have to be in your town. It doesn't have to be in your country. You can be a community of practice as big as you want it or as small as you want it.
I definitely agree with that. So, one question, since you put social media on there, I guess this would be a digital platform question. What would be an online platform that will be used to facilitate any community interactions that people can look for?
Yeah, I would say if you're doing a smaller, more targeted, you're going to look at your typical Zoom, Teams, um, Google Meets platform.
Mhm.
If you're looking for a larger type platform, you can certainly create like a Google group and use that for like an ongoing. You can have an ongoing community of practice that's just a chat back and forth and no time limit, no on and off. It's just always there to refer to when you need it. To ask the questions to people who might be in that organization or that position and just have that feedback. Again, it's one of those things you want to set up. You want to make sure that you're keeping that trust and openness. So you don't want to be blowing up somebody's phone at 3 a.m. so they can access when they want and leave when they want. Respect boundaries and family time and all those things within it. But also, yeah, Reddit you could use. There's plenty of organically developed community of practices that come up there and looking like, hey, I want to enter this field. What do I do? And people have advice and feedback. Those are where they're naturally occurring. You can reach out, you can network, you can make connections with those people. So their social media has just taken this concept that started as a coffee cooler conversation and blown it up massively. And we can take advantage of the world at our fingertips for these frameworks.
Great. Okay, so now we have our question on the table. She's typed it and she said, sorry, the audio wasn't working. Her question is, how do we manage negative individuals in a community practice to make it and keep the meeting exciting? That's a good question.
Yeah, so um I'm thinking of this negative of like every idea you bring up gets shot down. Please feel free to elaborate if that's kind of not where you're going with negative thinking. I would personally, I would advocate for in the community of practice to use Edward de Bono's six thinking hats methods. And if you're not familiar with the six thinking hats, I highly recommend you look it up and or watch Dr. Rosner's last hot topic, which did dive into that. But the six thinking hats is an amazing framework that you can use in a team environment to kind of get your whole team focused on you. We need all feedback. We need constructive feedback. We need those this could go wrong thoughts, but they don't need to dominate the meeting. So the six thinking hats method has the yellow hat and the more innovative and positive ideas. And so if we introduce that framework and we have it as a guideline and something is getting more negative, then we could just say, hey, I think these are some great points. Let's table that and pop to our yellow hat feedback and just kind of balance that. Um, if it's negative of more of it's just not building that trust, then it might time to have a conversation with that individual about, hey, this is a welcoming and trustworthy environment, and that might be a crucial conversation that needs to happen about how how can we table those ideas to the end and discuss one on one, or how can you bring up that into a more email oriented where it may not be construed as negative. Dr. Roser, I'd love to see your thoughts as well.
Yeah, I think it's very important to set ground rules and that everybody has that opportunity to speak because there are certain triggers that may shut down a conversation. That's why we say yes and. So oftentimes you can set the ground rules, but you have to do them. So, and enforce them in the sense of, I remember I was at the meeting this week and someone had said something negative, but it wasn't negative in the sense of, it was more like critical thinking and trying to say, what about this? And depending on our mindset, because our mindset is so geared to, that was negative and now it kind of shuts the brain down. So think of it in the De Bono six thinking hats. Everybody's thinking about something different at a particular moment about something that someone said. So when we're not all thinking in alignment at the same time, that's what creates the rub there. So having structure in an unstructured way so it can have that synergy of problem solving, you still need to have constructive criticism. You need to be able to do that. So it really is having the opportunity for someone to say yes and, because sometimes you need to say yes and then that is a trigger to the individual to say, we understand now how are we going to solve this? Because we have to go from the past, present to future in order to problem solve, because that's a community practice, right? We're acknowledging that, taking the management, doing better, improvement. And we can refocus on that and say, okay, this is what happened in the past, post-mortem. Here's what's happening right now. How do we get to that future? And sometimes people get stuck in the past, or they get stuck in the present, and they just can't get to the future. Or our job as a community is to help members get unplugged. And how can we lead by example and think the best of each other, and truly understand and unplug that. And if it just doesn't work, maybe that community of practice is not the right community for them. And that's okay too, because sometimes people are in the right bus in the wrong seat, or they're in the wrong bus.
Definitely. I definitely think it is important to say, as a question while we're finishing up, is what is the process that is used regularly to assess the effectiveness and the value of the whole community of practice? Is it beneficial? How do we need to update it? Anything like that? How would you two suggest that going forward?
I think that is very situational. But really you want to make sure that there is um, regular cycling through of ideas and topics. So if everybody's coming together and we're talking about our weekends and our kids, and that's great, and you want that, but we never get to the business part of it, that's not an effective community. That's a hangout session. If you're getting there and you're only discussing the same topic every week, um, and you never move on to the next topic, that's a complaint session. That's not a community of practice. So you really, and now if you have a specific problem and you set measurable goals, like I want to improve customer service phone time efficiency by 10% in 5 weeks, then you can have measurable, trackable goals specific to your community of practice. But in general, as a community of practice, I would say the success can be measured in coming up with new ideas often and coming up with theories or solutions to try and practice to solve those or improve the processes, and you measure each specific improvement based on your organizational needs.
From and yes, and
Mm-hmm.
I use three items when I'm part of a community of practice. One, we identified a problem. We learned from it. It was solved, and we reflect on it. And we have an intention to learn again. So problem, do we have a problem? Do we solve it? And then what did we learn from it? Equals future learning intention, meaning we constantly want to learn again and we reflect on it. So problem solving, solution, reflective thinking, equaling future learning intention.
Definitely. I love those answers. And we just had the young lady, she said that this person tends to break up several groups. So, this, I'm guessing, is helpful information with her in the groups that she's working in. So, thank you, ladies, for that. Well, I just want to close this out. This was phenomenal. I loved it. And I can't wait for the next one. Hopefully, I'll have a voice. But definitely, if you guys have some last minute words, I definitely am open to that. And if anyone has any questions they would like to ask us, definitely you can reach out to me. I will be sending this video out to everyone that has registered. So if they have any questions after reviewing it, please feel free to contact me and I'll definitely get you in connection with these two wonderful women tonight that are presenting to us. But I'm going to hand it over to you ladies to close out.
I would say go out there and create your own pocket of community, of greatness, of practice, and also join other great community or practices and continue to learn, continue to be curious.
I would echo that. Also, I'm going to hop on and join Rashida's train. If you have any questions about these frameworks, I know I can speak for myself and that in my experience, I've never had a question Dr. Rosner wasn't willing to help me answer. So if you have any questions after we're done with this, Rashida's giving me a nod. Yep. We would love to. It is not a burden. It is something we love to do. We could talk about these frameworks all day long. So please reach out. And if you see a community occurring, just put a date in the calendar. I want to challenge you all to put a date within the next month on the calendar somewhere in some community that you see, even if it's a family community. Just try it and use this framework and see if it gets you further or just new innovative ideas pop up. Because in my experience in the MBA program, learning the theories was fun and nice, but trying them and seeing those connectivity in the application was where it was like, this works. It's not just something that I got taught. It's actually something that works when you use it.
Thank you,
All
Rashida.
right.
Thank you so
Thank
much
you
for
so
having us
much,
this evening.
everyone. Yes, thank you for everyone that attended and thank you for the wonderful input. And now you're just setting the gate higher of where we need to be for the next one. So I will be looking forward for that. So thank you, ladies, and enjoy your evening, everyone. Thank you for coming out.
Thank you so much, Rashida.
Thank
Feel
you.
better.
Thank you.